Seb, great to see you again. Always a pleasure to be with you. To get straight into it, clearly there's, well, never really been a run-up to a US presidential election quite as febrile as this one, certainly not in my memory. Is it still an appropriate expression of the discourse of a mature republic, or have we got to the point where it's more like a knockdown, drag-out fight in a mixed martial arts cage fight?
It's even worse than the second version, because what we have is an elite run by one of the parties whose leaders consider half of the country, well, take your pick, Neil, which day of the week it is. We're either Nazis or we're rubbish, we're garbage. So think of the fact that the most powerful nation in the world that runs 12 nuclear aircraft carriers, has a man with a briefcase next to the president with the launch codes for the most powerful military in the world. The people running it think half of us are vermin and scum, and have members of their supporter base who've tried to kill my former boss on several occasions. So, yeah, if you read this scenario in a Tom Clancy novel, you'd say, beyond credulity, absolutely unbelievable. We are living through it now.
What it makes me wonder about, at the very least, if not worry about, is the thought of a Pyrrhic victory. You know that things are so bitter now that whichever side wins, the accumulated wounds on both sides. You know, the election's one day, well, effectively. But there's the rest of time to be dealt with, and it's hard to imagine how the Republic moves forward when the House is so divided.
This is a real question. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Let's go through the two scenarios. Let's avoid the third one where we have a knockout, drag out, and we don't have the results for weeks or months on end, which is possible given what the Democrats have already admitted to preparing. But if we have the left win, then the last 4 years continues. Then people like my former White House colleagues, Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro, are imprisoned for political purposes. I just had a man on my show, Ricky Williams, whose beautiful black wife was just given a custodial sentence for 3 years because she stood outside a Planned Parenthood in New York. And now her little baby daughter hasn't got a mother for the next 35 months. So we'll just see more of the abuse of the last 4 years. We'll have open borders. It won't be 20 million illegals in 4 years. It'll be 40 or 50 million illegals. And also, without requisite leadership in the White House, we'll have more world wars around the world. I mean, people forget they labeled him a unstable warmonger. But when President Trump was in the White House, there were no new wars. Putin didn't invade anyone. Israel didn't see the slaughter of the innocents at the hands of Hamas jihadis. So 4 more years of that under Kamala, and just imagine what the bad guys will do. So that's scenario one. Scenario two, if we win, if the good guys, if the patriots win, God willing, and President Trump is the commander-in-chief, it's funny, I do all these interviews for foreign channels now, and because it's the election, I get, heads of news agencies from Sweden coming to interview me in DC, and they always go, if your guy loses, is there going to be another January 6th? And I say, hang on a second, I'm less worried about maybe a couple of hours of rioting than if we actually win, because what's the left going to do? Forget January the 6th, in comparison to the summer of love with BLM and Antifa torching whole cities, $3 billion worth of damage done, 40 plus people killed by the likes of Antifa and BLM. The left has normalized violence. Why has the president got a scar on his ear right now? Because the Democrat Party for 8 years have called him Hitler, a despot, a dictator. And if quote unquote Hitler wins, Neil, what are the Democrats supposed to do then? What is this death cult going to react if we actually win the election?
It is a desperately serious situation. Obviously, just in the aftermath of the LA Dodgers baseball series win and the rioting there in the home of in the winning city, and I interviewed Mark Halperin a few weeks ago. Who was suggesting that a Trump win might occasion the greatest nervous breakdown, mental breakdown on the part of half of the American population as has ever been seen in history. It's critically important, isn't it, for the greatest republic must find a way, somehow must reconnect with some kind of empathy for the other side in order meaningfully to go forward.
Let's put blame where blame needs to be apportioned. The people who vote America first don't have to do anything. We're not the ones in the wrong. I did this tweet yesterday night, and I just did this long list, and I'll just give you a couple of items from memory. If you believe that America should actually have borders, you're garbage. If you believe that 12-year-old young girls shouldn't be raped and strangled to death by legal immigrants, you're garbage. If you believe that men shouldn't be allowed to compete in women's sports and destroy the sports careers of actual women, you're garbage. If you believe that we shouldn't have endless wars, you're garbage. So we don't have to do anything. We just want to win and have a prosperous and safe country. The other side has to, I think, Mark may be right. They need to have a psychotic break. They need to have, this come to Jesus moment where they say, you know what? Letting 20 million illegals into America to rape and murder beautiful young nurses in Atlanta like Lake and Riley, that might be a bad thing. Making sure that we spend another $100 billion in Ukraine to fund an endless war, maybe that's a bad thing. So,
Seb, can I just jump in?
It's not about empathy. It's about one side breaking out of their freaking cult.
Can I just to jump in though? Clearly, that you're enunciating the rhetoric. On the left, amongst the people of the left, amongst the notionally supporters of the Democratic Party, is this kind of talk of Nazis and garbage and all of the rest of it, is it moving the needle for those people away from the elite politicians who are spouting all of this stuff? Is it working on the people who are, after all, approximately 50% of the population?
Yeah, my friend Dan Bongino, who has the most successful radio show in America, former Secret Service agent, he has this kind of phrase. He says he calls Biden the rotting bag of oatmeal in the White House, and he you can extrapolate that. I mean, who votes for Joe Biden? And I've kind of twisted that into, look, if the candidate were a bag of potatoes with the letter D on it for Democrat, they'd vote for it, right? So the rhetoric of garbage and fascism, that's for the hardcore, that's for the base, that's for the loonies who think that, your 27th COVID vaccine booster is going to make you healthy. My hope is and look, you're a political geek, I'm a political geek. Elections are won in the middle by people who really aren't political, who don't see themselves as political. And I think the effect of the rhetoric, the garbage rhetoric, the he's Hitler rhetoric, is most important on those in the middle who say, hang on a second, when President Trump was in office, the price of petrol was 30% of what it is today. How does that make him Hitler? So I can't speak for the hardcore Democrat voter because I can't channel insanity, right? That's not in my wheelhouse. I can't do that. But yes, they have to be completely and utterly trounced at the election, and then maybe some normal person can come back in and say, hey guys, you know what, we screwed up for the last 20 years. Think of this thing, Neil. I'm no fan of Bill Clinton, right? having sex with 21-year-old interns in the Oval Office is not my kind of role model. But the one thing you can say about Bill is that he wasn't insane. He reined in the loonies. The radical left existed back then in the Democrat Party, but he reined them in. Today, there's nobody that reins them in. Let me give you one soundbite that your viewers can check if you don't believe me, and I'm not surprised you don't believe me. The most senior Democrat in the Senate, in the upper house, Chuck Schumer, went to the steps of the Supreme Court and held a press conference on camera where he threatened the lives of President Trump's Supreme Court appointees, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. He says on camera, "Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, you will reap the whirlwind." And I'm thinking, you're the most senior senator and you're threatening members of the Supreme Court? In a prior age, that Democrat would have been removed from office by his own party for being a lunatic. He's still the leader of the Democrats in the upper house.
To get to the specifics of Donald J. Trump's policies, I mean, you've already invoked the spectre of immigration and what it has, some of its manifestations. Mr. Trump is talking about mass deportation, for example. He's also has certainly floated the idea of, instead of income tax, compensating for the revenue generated previously by income tax via tariffs. Are these realistic, unapologetic policies that you, Seb Gorka, see being enacted by a Trump administration, or is it more
well,
like
I hope so.
pre-election rhetoric?
As a legal immigrant to the United States, it is an affront to me and everyone who got in line and waited, paid their money, took a test, took an oath to the Constitution, that people are being let in their millions who we know nothing about, and their first act in America is to break the law and be felons by coming here illegally. So Vivek Ramaswamy has said the same thing. Vivek's parents are legal immigrants, and he says, yeah, my parents agree. If you came here illegally, you can't stay here. You've broken the law every day you're in America, and you've broken the law with the first act you take. With regards to income tax, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, when income tax was created in the 1920s, it was brought in as a temporary measure. I mean, think about it. The legislation for income tax in America was a temporary stopgap. It is now 2024. But look, I think we're getting lost in the weeds here. I really don't care for questions of what legislative goal can be achieved in a presidential term by a man who only has 4 years because he can only serve one more term. We have a much bigger problem. When I joined the administration, when I was first in the White House, I refused to use the phrase deep state. I thought it was a little bit crazy, a little bit tinfoil hatty. Within a matter of weeks, as deputy of the president, I saw the deep state. I can give you legion, pieces of evidence, but let's just talk about one that, isn't classified and everybody knows. The leader of the opposition, whose home is protected by the Secret Service, who received 73 million votes in the last election, more than any other incumbent president, had his home raided by the FBI at gunpoint on a trumped-up classified documents charge that was later dismissed by a judge who actually believes in the Constitution. I want to know how we fix that. I want to know how we fix the fact that a 72-year-old grandmother was recently given a custodial sentence by a federal judge because she prayed inside Congress on January the 6th. She didn't kill anybody. She didn't steal anything. She walked into Congress for 4 minutes and said a prayer for our nation. She got a custodial prison sentence. I want to know how we fix that. You know me. My story is, one I've shared many times. My father escaped a communist prison after receiving a life sentence when he was betrayed by Kim Philby. At the age of 20, he was tortured and given a life sentence and liberated by the revolutionaries of 1956. That's my story, and it informs who I am. But never did I think in my life we would have political prisoners, not in Venezuela or North Korea, but in America. Just miles from where I'm sitting, Neil, there are people in a gulag, January the 6th defendants, who did nothing wrong and are given multi-year custodial sentences for quote-unquote trespassing. That's what's going to be hard to fix.
How does America fix this? How is this fixed? I mean, as you say that you don't want to get into the long grass of the minutiae of policies related to income tax and immigration and so on, and you point out rightly that there's only 4 years in a term and there's limits to what one man can do. But what you are requiring to be sorted is, I would suggest, the much bigger problem anyway. How do you get to the point where you move beyond where we are, which is that America on the world stage is increasingly looking like a crazy place?
One way and one way only. And it goes to the lessons of Nuremberg and the lessons of South Africa, truth and reconciliation, that goes to the lustration policies of the Baltic states and Poland after the fall of communism. So we have to demonstrate with some very high-profile cases that we have put the blindfold back on Lady Justice. Lady Justice has no blindfold. And if you're the wrong political party, if you have the wrong last name, you can end up in prison for years. If you have the right last name, like Hunter Biden, you can commit multiple felonies on video and smile about it and joke about it and get book deals. So this is the only way to fix it. Those who trampled on the civil rights of innocent Americans, like my colleague, Steve Bannon, like that 73-year-old grandmother, these individuals have to be put in the dock in front of a jury of their peers with an impartial judge, and they have to face the consequences of their crimes. Though we just think about this. We've just had a whistleblower in Congress from the FBI tell us that it wasn't just the fake Christopher Steele Russia dossier and the Mueller investigation. We have the then director of the FBI, James Comey, deploy women as honeypots into the Trump campaign to try and inveigle themselves into a position where they could blackmail members of the Trump campaign back in 2015. This isn't Venezuela. This isn't some tin-pot dictatorship in Latin America. Jim Comey, James Brennan, the director of the CIA, all of these people who abuse the incredible powers they have must be seen to face justice. Otherwise, average Americans will have no faith that the Republic exists in a way where all men are equal before the law. What President Trump says again and again and again is so true. It's not about me. It's about you. I'm just in their way. We have to demonstrate to Americans that Lady Justice does wear a blindfold, with some high-profile cases where the most egregious criminals pay a penalty.
When there's so much talk about, well, there has been so much talk of interference with elections in 2016, in 2020, however you want to define interference, what do you make of the news from my side of the Atlantic of the Labour Party, which is the party of government here in Britain, apparently dispatching individuals, a three-figure number of individuals, to seek to support Kamala Harris's campaign and by extension, hypothetically, to undermine the campaign of her rival Donald Trump. What do you make of that?
Well, as I've written op-eds in the UK, as I did several interviews at the time, which I think led in part to the Labour Party having to rethink that manoeuvre, it's a bloody stinking outrage. I mean, think about it. Is there more? And I hate using this language because all the tinfoil hat people are going to say, "Oh, see, I told you so." But is there more? Is there a better piece of empirical evidence that the globalist elite exists and they don't give a fig for the will of the people? That one socialist administration in one country 5,000 miles away dispatches or plans to dispatch its minions to our republic to hobble the opposition leader and help the incumbent also socialist party. And the worst part of it all, and you must laugh at it because it's so bloody egregious. They're so arrogant in their disdain for the actual will of the voter that they post about it on LinkedIn. I mean, these people are so arrogant and yet so stupid that this isn't some behind-the-scenes machinations by some eminent grise. This is, hey, you want to come join us to undermine the election in America, in the swing states, to help out Kamala? Yeah, case closed. The globalist enterprise is real, and they just admitted
it. It seems to me that there is simply a void of comprehension, of empathy, all of that between the political elite, and I'm loath to describe politicians as elite, quite frankly, but a void between the elite and the people. I do wonder how we have got here, we in Britain, yourselves in the United States of America, where the political class seems to be talking to itself and each other, while the rank and file, us, are left flailing and scrabbling after whatever crumbs fall from the top table. How have we got here?
Well, again, I need to, push back on that, right? You're making it sound like it's this univalent answer and there's one blob that has no empathy. Let's talk about empathy for a second. President Trump is probably the most empathetic billionaire on the planet today. People miss the most important part from the McDonald's, visit to the fry station. President Trump has donned the apron. He's making the French fries. This is an act of empathy in and of itself. And then he's handing out the orders at the drive-through window. And an immigrant couple drives up with relatively thick South Asian accents. And the husband says, "Oh my gosh, wow, Mr. President, we pray for you every day." And then from the other side of the vehicle, a little bit quieter, you hear the wife's voice, also accented, probably from India. And think about it, the immigrants who came here legally are praying for President Trump. And she says, "You took a bullet for us, Mr. President." And what does he do? He doesn't have some pat cue card response. He pauses and he says, in this kind of quiet inner voice, it's not normally indicative of his style, he says, "Yeah, I guess I did take a bullet for you." I mean, there is no greater empathy than to risk death for your fellow man. That's what Jesus taught us. That is the ultimate act of love. And I was there at Butler, Pennsylvania, when President Trump went back to the scene of the crime where an assassin's bullet hit his head at 3,000 feet per second. So the lack of empathy is not a function of us. It's a function of the false conservatives, such as the Tory party. I grew up under Margaret Thatcher. There is no Tory party in the UK today. And I've heard shocking reports from my friend Calvin Robinson that Nigel Farage, who I thought would be the future of conservatism in the UK, has seemingly been co-opted by the blob and now has backtracked on the threat of Muslim extremism and the need to export and deport illegals from the UK. So, the problem is the establishment. Why does the establishment not have empathy? Because they're godless scum who deny the existence of transcendental truth. When you deny the existence of transcendental truth, when you hate yourself and then you project onto the country your hatred, then you can't, by definition, have empathy, because the only thing that matters is the accrual and the maintenance of power, Neil.
One last question, Seb, if I may. I'm aware of the time's against us, as always, but you knew Donald Trump before. You knew him in the world of before. He seems to me to be a very different man. Even before the bullets, he seemed to be a different character. I wonder if you see that change in him also.
Well, I saw the change in him. So my wife is chair of the Republican Party for our county in Virginia. So we went to the RNC convention, the nominating convention. And the way he entered the arena 2 days after getting shot was a facial expression you've never seen on the president. I mean, I had once in the Oval Office, but the public had never seen this very dour, this very serious expression. And he sat there every evening in the box watching the speakers, and then he gave his speech. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's a cliche, but when you're touched by death, it forces you often to reevaluate. So this is a different man. But I'd go back to, it's even before Butler. 2 years ago, November 2 years ago, I was at Mar-a-Lago for the event where he announced his re-election campaign. And I know the man. I've worked for him. I met him before he was president. And I'm standing there in the ballroom with 800 other, MAGA luminaries. And then it just hits me like a gut punch. The man they've tried to destroy for 4 years, who has been called Hitler, a white supremacist, a Nazi, a misogynist, he's prepared to do it again. And that's the shocking fact. This is a man who could just go off to Turnberry and spend the rest of his days playing golf, or, as he says during his rallies, I could be on a beach in Monte Carlo. But what is he doing instead? He's literally risking his life every time he gets up on that stage in a public arena for one reason and one reason alone. And it's the reason I agreed to work for him back in 2015. Within seconds of meeting this man, I knew that he loved our country and he wanted to save it. That's the real Donald Trump. And I think almost being murdered on multiple occasions has simply reinforced his dedication to his fellow man and his mission to make sure that we are once again, as Ronald Reagan said, the shining city on a hill.
Seb Gorka, it's always a pleasure to hear your insights and your perspective. Like you, on your side of the Atlantic, I think we all here are holding our breaths to see what must happen next. Thank you for your time.
God bless. If you want to find out more, just follow me on social media. And for my latest analysis on what really happened in the Trump administration, my Substack, sebastiangorka.substack.com. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Seb Gorka.
To stay up to date with US politics, including the upcoming election, don't forget to subscribe to GBN America on YouTube.